Hola, this is Enrique Morones of Gente Unida, and we're continuing a very special episode on Buen Hombre Magnificent Mujer as a tribute to Chicano Park. As we all know, it's the 50th anniversary coming up here, and all year, all year we want to celebrate the 50th anniversary, and that's why we've had so many special guests, and we're going to continue to have guests throughout the year, and many of these guests will be coming back throughout the year to give a more extensive history of their work. And the people that we've been highlighting since we started Buen Hombre Magnificent Mujer are people that you should get to know. Many are well known. Some are people that are just icons in the community. And it's very important that we recognize their work, their history, especially for our youth. And some of these icons have gone to the next life, and we want to remember their stories. And that's why it's so important to document everything that we're doing. And that's why with Buen Hombre Magnificent Mujer, we're paying this very special tribute to Chicano Park. And don't forget that the Chicano Park Steering Committee is doing a virtual event throughout the week. So make sure you tap into that. So today we have a magnificent mujer, and boy, is she a magnificent mujer, and her name is Beatrice Zamora. Beatrice, ¿cómo estás? How you doing?
Well, thank you. Nice to see and hear everybody today.
Well, we're delighted that you can join us. And the way that I usually start when I used to have a radio show and now with these podcasts, the talks that we have is by having the person self-identify. So Beatrice, when somebody says, or somebody comes up to you and says, who is Beatrice Mora? What do you tell them? What's a little bit about your history? You know, where you're from and so forth.
Okay. Well, let me just clarify. So my name is Beatrice Zamora Aguilar. And
sorry. Beatrice Zamora. Okay.
And I was born in San Diego. Actually, I recently found out that I was born in Logan Heights, which I'm very proud of. But I was raised in Los Angeles. My family heritage on my mom's side, my grandmother and my grandfather came to the United States during the Mexican Revolution. My grandmother came as a mail order bride to a little mining town in Arizona called Jerome, Cottonwood area of northern Arizona. And on my dad's side, my family roots are New Mexico. So we're more from the Tularosa, White Sands area of New Mexico. And as far back as I can look into my lineage, we've always been in these lands. So that's my cultural heritage. I'm Chicana and raised for most of my life in the eastern part of Los Angeles. Came back to San Diego as a young woman and made my life and home here. So that's a little bit about who I am, where I come from. While living here in San Diego, I was married and raised a family and was an educator for many years and have always been I consider myself to be a cultural warrior. And I work with the community to help Chicano community really understand more about their roots, more about their heritage, and their place in this world, which is represents a long history and chain of contributions, not only to this country, but to the Americas.
Wonderful. So Beatrice Zamora Aguilar, a real icon and a real, with that background, now I understand some of where that power comes from in the work that you're doing. And some of the well-known work that you do is, of course, the dancing, the Aztec dancing. And I've seen the group and the wonderful dancing and the history that portrays. How did you get involved in Aztec dancing?
Well, the interesting thing is when I was a little girl, I always heard from my parents that I was Mexican. We didn't say Mexicano. I was raised, like I said, in Los Angeles, and my parents were bilingual. So they mainly spoke English to us, although they were very fluent in Spanish. And so we knew that our identity was Mexican. We ate, Mexican food, and we practiced Mexican traditions. But I didn't know much else about my life other than, good tamales at Christmas, and, that family was important. But one thing that my dad always did is he always gave us nicknames. And one of the nicknames that I had, one of many, was I was the Apache. And I didn't know why I was the Apache, except that I had really dark eyes, and he always said that my black eyes were because of my Apache heritage. And that's all I knew. But growing up, I always wanted to know more about that. And I liked being called Apache. And so when I was in college, I was attending Cal State Fullerton. One day we're having a Chicano Culture Day, and I'm in the booth making tacos. And I see these danzantes come in and walk across the lawn. I had never, ever seen Native American dance prior to that, and let alone Mexican Native Indigenous dance. And so I immediately left my post and just kind of ran over to where they were dancing. And I watched them dance. And as I watched them dance, I began to get those, those chills that you get up the spine of your back, where everything is just lighting up in your body. And I started crying. I didn't know why. I don't know why I was so emotionally moved and touched by the energy, but I just was very moved. So that was the end of that day. A couple years later, I finished college in Fullerton, and I decided to pursue a master's degree. And I came to San Diego to pursue the master's and to reconnect with the place that I was born. And one of the first persons I met was my future husband-to-be, Mario Aguilar. And he invited me to go and see them dance. And so I didn't know, I thought I was going to see ballet folklorico, which I also liked. And I get there and I see that it's the same dance that I had seen. And I found out that he had actually been one of those danzantes dancing at Cal State Fullerton the day that I had been emotionally moved. So yeah, that's kind of my introduction, and that's kind of what brought me to the danza. I realized that there was some kind of cosmic energy pulling me to this place.
That's quite a story. So you had that earth-changing or life-changing moments when you were behind the booth selling tacos, and then you see Mario and company out there dancing, and it just something happened within you, and you're saying, I've got to be part of that on all levels, not only becoming a dancer, but meeting Mario. And that is a very, very powerful story. And in your upbringing, where you have the bilingual and proud of your roots and so forth, I can really relate to that, except in my history, it wasn't bilingual. It was always Spanish. We always spoke Spanish at home. And so Spanish was always our first language, and is. And I learned to speak English actually when I went out into the streets, because the neighbors in Golden Hill, where I grew up, most of the neighbors there all spoke English. So that's kind of how I learned how to speak English. But this danzante moment when you were at Fullerton, and then you come down to San Diego, what was your undergraduate and graduate degrees in? What were you studying?
Well, at Cal State Fullerton, I majored in both sociology and ethnic studies, which was primarily Chicano studies. And then I didn't know what I was going to do the next step. I knew I didn't want to be an elementary school teacher because I had taken an internship. All students should take an internship before they complete college to help them reconfirm their goals. And I had taken an internship in a third grade classroom, and I realized that was not for me. And then I had a professor who, I think he was an Irish man, had bright orange hair, and he, towards the end of my study, he said, you really ought to consider going for the master's degree. And at that time, I thought, this is crazy. I never thought that I had what it took to complete a bachelor's degree. I figured somebody was going to, figure it out eventually that I didn't have the intelligence to complete the bachelor's degree. I think we call that the imposter syndrome. And a lot of Chicanos face that because we didn't grow up believing that we were capable. And so when he suggested that, I thought, wow, okay, I'm going to go ahead and see what's out there. So I applied to 2 master's programs in counseling, and I got accepted to both. And I decided to come back to San Diego to explore my cultural roots and my cultural homeland. So those were my that's my formal educational training. And then of course I've had training in danza. I've been dancing now for about 40 years, and going to Mexico and learning from the traditional groups in Mexico that have hundreds and hundreds of years of history, as well as bringing many dance teachers over the years, maestros, to the United States to not only teach us, but to teach others.
That's wonderful. And one of the ironies of your story is a lot of the people that I've interviewed through the years when I used to have radio shows or other podcasts, oftentimes the story is just the opposite. While they're in school, they're told, that's it. Why are you even thinking about going to college, much less getting a master's? But the people fight on. They take that on as a challenge, and then they go on and get, they graduate from college. Sometimes they get a master's. Some of them even become doctors. So it's wonderful that you did follow that path and that you met Mario, because talking about a teacher, somebody that can teach, one of the things that I've always enjoyed, and I've mentioned it to you guys, is I really love the way that when you're doing the dances, they're explained. You talk to the people, you tell them a little bit about the history, what the dance means, and that's very, very powerful. That's something that I think a lot of times people just kind of take it for granted, and they don't realize what is really going on. And do you remember, Beatrice, well, I would imagine you remember, your first introduction to Chicano Park, when you first went to Chicano Park? Not necessarily the first time you danced, although that might have been the time, but when you first heard or went to Chicano Park.
Well, I remember my first Chicano Park day, which was 1979, spring of 1979. And I was not dancing yet, didn't start dancing till a year later. And I just went to party and hang out and relish and enjoy my culture. And it was a beautiful experience. As I walked the grounds and I got to learn more about the history of Chicano Park, the history of the strength and perseverance of our people, I knew at that moment that I would always be connected to this park. And to me, the park represents sacred land. It's a symbol of a sacred and spiritual movement of a community that, grassroots, poor overall in terms of economic means, but rich in cultura and in faith. And, I know it's just a small little plot of land, but there's some people who don't see the beauty of the park. But to me, it's beautiful that what it represents in terms of the strength and the courage of so many of our antepasados and the people who've been carrying it on for the last 50 years, and hopefully a message to our youth that they need to pick up that charge and continue to take care of not only Chicano Park, but what it symbolizes, which is, finding your voice and speaking up for what is right, what is good for the greater good.
So so to you, what Chicano Park means to you is sacred. It's sacred. It's sacred lands. Because one of the things that we've been asking people is, what does Chicano Park mean to them? And they come up with all these different types of meanings. And sacred lands, it's very, very true. Those are sacred lands. And it's wonderful how the Chicano Park Steering Committee has steered all of us in the direction of recognizing that and protecting that, and being able to pass it on to the generations that are going to follow. And that's one of the things that we're doing, is that we're going to be creating some spaces where we could donate to the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center, because we got to remember where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And those are definitely sacred lands. I, like everybody that's been there, really treasures those memories of Chicano Park, because it's definitely sacred lands. Now, how about the first time you went there with the danzantes and actually danced? Was it a Chicano Park Day celebration, or was it another type of an event there?
Well, you know, our dance group, Danza Mexicana, is not the first dance group in San Diego. The first dance group in San Diego was taught by our maestro who came from Mexico, Florencio Yescas, en paz descanse. And that group's name was Toltecas en Aztlán. And my husband Mario was part of that group. I was part of it for only just a few months before we departed. There were some differences that happened, as will happen in any movement, and we decided to start our own group in 1980, Danza Mexicana. So our charge for at least 20, maybe 22 years is we created and carried on the whole danza aspect of Chicano Park. We practiced there on a weekly basis. We practiced at Sherman Heights Community Center. We practiced at the Centro Cultural de la Raza. And we laid down a foundation for teaching these cultural traditions in our communities. So we carried that on for many, many years. And at some point we decided, for various reasons again, to kind of pass that baton on. And we continue to teach, and now we focus in San Isidro and the South Bay, Chula Vista, San Isidro, and for a while we taught in Imperial Beach. So we've been an integral part of the formation of the danza at Chicano Park. We continue to provide a ceremony there every year. We work with the other groups in San Diego, and you know, Chicano Park is just a special place to lay those prayers down, to lay that good energy, to give thanks to our past generations, our elders that taught us these sacred ways, and to think about the future generations to come. You know, with that in mind, and I do want to share this in case we're going to run out of time, but I recently have written a book, and it's a children's book, and it's called The Spirit of Chicano Park, El Espíritu del Parque Chicano. It's a bilingual children's book, and it talks about the history and the founding of the park. It's historical fiction, and in the back pages of the book, I've conducted several interviews. So we have a timeline of what happened to Barrio Logan and how Chicano Park came about. We have Tommy Camarillo, Chicano Park Steering Committee Chairperson, Josie Talamantes, another really important figure in helping us become part of a national movement. We have artists including Guillermo Aranda, Victor Ochoa, let's see, who else? I have, of course, Mario Aguilar is interviewed as a danzante, Patricia Aguayo as another artista. We have the Enrique family, including Isabel Enrique, and of course, Chunky Sanchez is showcased because of his wonderful music that he contributed. All of these different movements, including the lowriders, so we have Rigo Reyes, and let's see, who else? I think that's about it, that are focused on the back of the book to talk about how Chicano Park has inspired these movements, and at the same time, these movements have inspired Chicano Park to continue to strengthen. And to me, it's really important that kids know about what Chicano Park represents, who are some of the founding members that really built this movement. And not just San Diego, but we have had an impact on the nation in terms of the murals, in terms of the arts, and just in terms of the social justice movement that has come out of the building of Chicano Park. So all of the proceeds that are earned from this book will be donated back to the Chicano Park Steering Committee and to the Chicano Park Museum, because this book is about celebrating our cultura, but also building for the future.
Well, that's so wonderful. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. We were talking about that a little earlier before we started the podcast, and this children's book is something so important, as you mentioned, and not only nationally, but internationally, because as you said, your group has gone to Mexico, and the danzantes have gone to not just this region, but to other countries. And it's so important that we educate our youth. So I'm so glad that you're doing this book, and that you're going to be donating money to the Chicano Park Steering Committee and to the Museum and Cultural Center. How can people find out about this book? Is there, once it's out, how can they get a copy, find out about it, support it? Do you have a website?
I do have a website, and I haven't quite flipped the switch to publish it, but it is toltecapress.com, TOLTECA press.com, toltecapress.com. And if you go there in about a week, you should be able to find out more information about the book, and contact me if you would like to purchase one. We can do it by mail order. I had hoped to have a big, kind of book release at our Chicano Park Day celebration, but of course we weren't able to have that this year at this time, but maybe we will. We still don't know what the future will hold.
That's right. And so toltecapress.com. How about if they want to find out about the dancing, about the Aztec dancing? Where can they go to find out more about your group? And what does it mean? What does the name of your group mean?
Mexicayo, Danza Mexicayo. Mexicayo is a Nahuatl word that basically means coming from the Mexican nation or of the Mexican nation. So basically we're a danza from the Mexican nation. And you can go to mexicayo.org, MEXICAYOTL.org. And you can find out more information about our dance group, about our dance tradition. I think one of the things that sets us apart, it doesn't make us better, but it makes us different, as you said, Enrique. My husband is quite the educator, but many of the people in our group are either educators, social justice workers, people who are always contributing to society on many levels. And so much about what we do is about educating. It's not so much about the performing, although people like to see that and we love to share our dances, but it's about teaching about some of the values and belief systems of our antepasados, and how some of those teachings really, we need to hold on to them, because it's what will get us through many of these tumultuous times that we're facing.
Absolutely. And I've seen you not only when you do your performances, but when you're practicing and so forth. And what's the age range? I see from the little tiny children to elders. What's the age range of your group?
Well, I think our youngest dancer is probably about 2 months old. And you might laugh at that, but that person was dancing with their mother in the womb. And
well, that's true.
Will continue to be a member of the group. And then probably my husband and I are the oldest, and we're both 65. And so we love that. That's what the danza does. That teaches everyone to have a role, an important, significant role in what we do. Our children are our future. And so we love to showcase the children and let them know that what they have to say, what they share with us is just as valid as what anyone in the circle has to share with us. So all ages are welcome, all capabilities. We've had people with delayed learning disabilities that learn to drum, people that have different kinds of differences. Everyone's accepted. It's not our place to determine who should be a part of the circle. We just say whoever's called to the circle, if you come in a good way, we more than welcome you.
It's such a beautiful spirit and the work that you're doing. We're definitely going to have you back, Beatrice, because there's so many more questions that I'm sure I know that I and the listeners have, about the drumming and so on and so forth. So we'd love to have you back, and it's so generous that you're going to be donating the proceeds from the book to the Chicano Park Steering Committee and to the Museum and Cultural Center. And it's just an honor to have you with us today. Please give my love to Mario and to the dancers. And the last question that I often like to ask our guest is, to you, what is love? To you, Beatrice, what is love?
That's heavy. Well, love is natural. I mean, I think that we're all these spiritual beings that, love is probably the most natural component of who you are. And so the way that I demonstrate love is cooking for my family, sharing the danza with my community, being kind to others, listening, and understanding that, it's really okay to have different opinions and different belief systems, but the bottom line is to do no harm to others and to love our mother. And our mother is the earth. Our mother is our biological and physical mother that lives on this earth. For Catholics, it's the Virgen de Guadalupe or the Virgin Mary. We all have different ways of defining mother, but we all come from the Mother Earth. So loving and cherishing the earth, taking care of the earth and the environment, to me is a really important aspect of love.
Well said. That's beautiful. So Beatrice, thank you very much for joining us. Once again, Beatrice Zamora Aguilar, and she's going to be soon. We'll have that children's book out there, so we'll make sure we post that so people know where they can purchase it, and also to learn more about the dancing. Thank you very much for joining us today. You're definitely an example of the fact that love is an action, not just a word. So muchísimas gracias, que Dios te bendiga, y adelante con Chicano Park, y viva Chicano Park.
Y viva Chicano Park. Thank you, Enrique. Hasta luego.
Adiós, muchas gracias.